Hello. Stupid microphone. I think I legitimately just have to freaking sit here and hold the cord on the microphone. My dog is like a kid and waits until the 1 minute I'm starting to do something to try and come in the door. Hold on 1 second. I'm so sorry, but if I don't let my dog in, she'll just sit here and like whimper at the door. 1 moment, please. Sorry. Okay. Also, my connection is being weird for my internet, so this is going to be a great live stream. Hey, Navy, how are you? I don't remember. Sorry. Me and technology, you know. Maybe you don't. If you don't, Nikki May will tell you repeatedly. Okay. So apparently, a few hours ago, what do they call it? Police. Shush your mouth. Shush. I didn't push play yet. You push play. Police interview with Alec Murdaugh in the Suburban the night of the crime. Pardon me. He has been released. Got a little distracted. Sorry about that. So I thought about going over that. I have watched a little bit of it, but not all of it. So I just thought I would stream that and watch that. I don't know if anyone watched the trial today. Get comfortable, girl. That's my dog. But it was they did, what is it called? Interview? What is it called when they talk to people on the stand? I don't know. But they did that with people on the stand. It was a lot of the first responders and detectives who arrived on the scene that night. From the defense, it was a lot of, if you were like walking around there, which it was outside, how do you know you didn't mess up some microscopic evidence? I understand that in an enclosed area, but it was outside. It started raining, and I'm sure they didn't like smush their foot into everything. So I personally feel like it was a weak attempt by the defense team to distract. All right. Let me see if I can share my screen. So I'll just start playing this. This is on the Law and Crime YouTube channel, I guess. I don't know. I think they have a TV show. Lately, meaning maybe the past 48 hours, I haven't been so great with words. I'm not typically great with words, but they've been extra wordy, you know? Okay. So here again is an interview with Alec Murdaugh the night that Maggie and Paul were found. and they're just kind of asking him questions. They're not necessarily interrogating him, but they are, just following up and asking questions. So, just want to check one more thing, and I'm going to hit play. I'm going to mute. Sorry, I should probably describe too.
State your full name for me, please.
Well, he's going to ask. This redheaded guy, can you see my cursor? I don't even know. But the redheaded-ish, strawberry blonde-ish guy in the white t-shirt, that's Alec Murdaugh. He is the one whose wife and son he found deceased. Of course, in the driver's seat is a detective. Behind him is a female detective. And the person in the back next to the other police officer in the checkered shirt, I have not verified his name and everything, but from what, because again, there's just so much information out here constantly about this, but I believe he is his friend and colleague from what was at the time PMPED. Is it PMPED or PMPD? I think PMPD sounds more like it. The law firm that his great grandfather started, and where Alec was an attorney as well. So he was there to kind of represent him. And I think kind of loosely so, because although I think the police officers were, in their minds, this doesn't really add up, this doesn't really add up, this doesn't really add up. They weren't treating him like a suspect yet. They were just gaining information about the whole experience. I don't think they 100% suspected him. Obviously, if they did, he probably would have been arrested that night, perhaps. And I say perhaps because, again, the Murdaugh family had a lot of, and probably still do, a lot of authority and influence in this area in regard with law enforcement, because people were and still are afraid of them. They're powerful and they will sue. And again, a lot of people wind up not existing on the earth anymore when they cross paths. Not everyone. Some people they try to blame for boat crashes instead of having their son be accountable for it. But anyway, all right, I'm going to mute.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
See, he said Murdaugh.
And spell your last name so I get it correct. Murdaugh. All right. And you go by Alec? Yes, sir.
Said Alec?
And
yes, sir.
Birth, Mr. Murdaugh.
So even though it sounds like I'm saying it weird, it's how he pronounces it.
1968. And a good phone number for you. 803.
Sorry. I am going to speed this up for just a moment because he actually gives his phone number. And it's probably in evidence right now, but I don't know if that's all the world needs is that phone number, which they already have it, but I'm not going to play it. Hopefully. Okay, I'm going to mute myself again.
All right. As I stated, I'm David Owen in Lower Rutland with Colleton County, and I'm with SLED.
Hey, Navy.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Sorry, I think I unmuted you and was like, the guest wants to keep themselves muted. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are you familiar with this case at all?
I think only like tangentially. So, if what I understand is that the man in question, Alex Murdaugh, was already under investigation for, I think it was like financial crimes,
Yes.
and then he ended up, crazy enough, like murdering his wife and kids in order
That's
to
what
try to
he's being
cover it
accused
up.
of.
In order to try to cover up the financial crimes, right? Is it? Am I tracking?
Yes.
That is wow.
That's not even the half of it. But again, that could go on for like hours and whatever, but you're pretty much right on track with what could be seen as a motive for him killing his wife and son. And it's not just the financial crimes too, although he was, in my opinion, trying to cover that up.
Well,
The
how does that make
son,
any sense?
which part?
How would committing murder cover up financial crimes, and that somehow be like a better outcome than just getting charged with financial crimes?
I think with the everyday sane person and also someone who the financial crimes is just one aspect. His son, the one that was found murdered, he is responsible or was going to be on trial for being responsible for driving a boat that crashed and one passenger died. That night of the boat crash, there are rumors out there, and I say kind of rumors loosely because people have legitimate sources, that Alec, his brother, were going to the hospital because there were, besides Paul, the son that again was murdered this evening of this interview right here, there were 5 other people because they were like 3 couples. At the hospital, Alec and his brother were talking to the other passengers, not his son, not going and worried about his son, not checking on him, not anything like that. He was going and trying to get everyone to say the same story and basically pin it on this other kid and say he was the one driving instead of his son. And again, it's hard without going into hours of details. I know you're familiar with like Southern culture.
Yes, a little bit.
This is a family who has been in South Carolina for a very long time, particularly the low country of South Carolina. I have not gone back and looked at their full history, but these are people who have been capable of a lot of things and gotten away with a lot of things.
Wasn't there an aspect where they had to take down a picture of, was it his, like, was it Alex's father or grandfather from the courthouse?
Grandfather.
Because he was a judge or something there, something like that, and that's how, like,
Oh,
like
yeah.
what you were saying, it went back to like that's how deep the roots go with it with his family, right?
Yes. His father, grandfather, and great grandfather, I believe, were all solicitors over several counties in the low country of South Carolina. Alec was not a solicitor, and I was ignorant to this. Solicitor in South Carolina, maybe other places as well, is equivalent to the district attorney.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I've heard that before. Yep, I get that.
they again, it's pretty well known. There are interviews and sources. Like when Alec was in school at University of South Carolina, there was some incident where he may or may not have been driving impaired and drove his car into something on campus. And basically, when the police arrived there, like it was already a non-incident. Like it never was reported. In South Carolina, and again, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I was and still am, but am educating myself on how the political system works here. Again, I don't know if it's the same in every state, but a lot of attorneys and judges are appointed by solicitors.
Really?
So if you want to work in the legal system in South Carolina, you don't want to piss these people off.
Well, that's interesting because I know here in Texas, at least the judges. Now, when it comes to like the district attorney's office, that's different because that's handled by like the local government, state government, all this kind of stuff. But at least the judges here are elected, right? So the judges have to like run for election like every couple of years to get reelected as judge of like so and so, precinct or county or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'm learning more. You probably heard me talk about Murdaugh Murders podcast quite a bit.
Yes.
Um, my husband and I, gosh, sorry, every once in a while my microphone unplugs. But when we first heard of Paul and Maggie being found shot to death, my husband and I were like, oh shit, someone got some backwoods justice, because we knew that this was some big South Carolinian influential family, and we knew his son was being accused of being the driver of this. And there's even dash cam video that was out pretty close to the time of the boat crash that had Connor, who's one of the passengers, whose girlfriend is the one that passed away in the boating accident. He's on the dash cam just like screaming and crying, and he's telling the police, like, do you know who that is? Like talking about Paul, because I guess he was walking around with a smirk on his face. And Connor's like, get him away
Wow.
from me. Mallory is missing. You're responsible for this. Because he was pretty erratic and drunk and just angry at all the passengers for trying to tell him what to do and get him not to be behind the wheel of the boat. And he was like, nope, nobody's going to drive this boat. I'm going to drive this boat. It was just a bunch of like rage and chaos. So
Wow.
Connor's on dash cam video basically saying, you don't get it. He's going to get away with this. He's a Murdaugh. Do you know who his father is? You know who, whatever. So we were under the impression that this really sucks, that it sounds like someone took the law into their own hands to get revenge or justice, so to speak, because their friend passed in the boating accident. But then I kept seeing things online and even hearing on our local news, like different things about the family. So I just went on and like Google, I'm like, who are these people? I don't get it. Why do people keep talking about them other than the obvious? And
Right.
that's when the Murdaugh Murders podcast came up. And again, there was just a handful of episodes at the time. And Mandy Matney is a reporter who investigated the boat crash at the time. And she kind of did her podcast reported as things were happening. So every week something different would happen, and I would see it on the news and listen to her details on the podcast, and it was just like this Southern Gothic soap opera that I couldn't turn away from. And also kind of wanted to know about because they were saying names that, I've heard before and
Right.
are tied in with our government here. So yeah, and there's like story after story after story. Some people that he represented, because again, I'm not sure if personal injury attorney is the proper terminology for him, but he did represent people who were in accidents. I think more like car accidents. And he kind of won a lot of lawsuits for his clients that dealt with like a tire company. But
So is there a wonder whether or not his his ability to win is directly tied to his family's influence in the
yeah,
area?
that's come under question
Hmm.
because he would basically always win. And he would win a lot of money for his clients. That was
Well,
normally unheard of.
especially depending on so I'm assuming that he dealt more in the civil aspect of like lawsuits and stuff against, it wasn't criminal, right?
Right. No, it wasn't criminal.
So in certain cases, and I don't know if this is true in South Carolina, but I know in other places, like it depends on the judge. Like the judge can award, penalties, right?
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff. And so that's very possible. Like if he had his like family history and they were like, there was this like nepotism that existed, and these judges would
Right.
award him these outlandish, responses to the claims. That's a lot they're going to have to go back and redo.
Yeah. Is that even possible? Like, I mean, and some of these
Well,
clients are no longer alive.
so the families, if I understand correctly, because I was speaking to a couple lawyers in my time. One of them
Yeah.
was like Nate the lawyer and all this kind of stuff. And if I
Yeah.
understand correctly, they can if there was an aspect of malpractice on the the legal system as far as the way that they awarded it, or if they were heavy-handed because of some kind of biasness, that is
Right.
an aspect for an appeal. So they could go back and ask for the a new judge who's not associated with his family to, or
Yes.
maybe in a different county, right, outside of where where this family lived, to
Right.
reevaluate the case and see if what had happened was actually a legal malpractice.
What if it were not only judges, but maybe somebody who worked for the insurance companies? The insurance companies of like liability insurance or whatever the term is for, like, let's just say Michelin or something. I'm just throwing
Well, if
a tire.
I'm a layperson, I am not a lawyer, so I will
Mhm.
not claim to be, a legal scholar, but
Sure.
it would seem that that would be in and of itself depending on if they're doing like a fraud case, if it's actually determined to be a fraud, which it becomes a criminal aspect, right?
Right.
And, like there was an aspect of conspiracy between, like the judge and the lawyer and like the insurance company, that
Oh, yeah.
becomes like that. You touched on aspects of RICO, right?
Yeah.
And so that would then become a criminal case, which if they didn't trust the judicial system in that one county, they'd have to bring in external like DOJ and all this kind of stuff to come in and like
Right.
reevaluate all the cases. And if there was this aspect of RICO, then everyone who was involved in that, if it was considered to be a RICO case, would be criminally liable and then also
Mhm.
civilly liable.
There are gonna be a lot of heads rolling for sure. And I have been distracted by the holidays and then this trial coming up. So another interesting aspect of this is a couple of Alex's friends. One named Russell Lafitte, another named Corey Fleming. I know a little bit more about Russell Lafitte because he was just on trial. He worked for Palmetto State Bank, which I believe is in Columbia, South Carolina. He was friends with Alec. So when Alec would win a case for his client, a lot of times, especially if it were a younger person, he would say, you know, he would be advising them, and what he was saying wasn't necessarily wrong, but his intentions and how he went about it was wrong. He would say, you know, this is a large sum of money that you're getting. You're going to be set up for the rest of your life. You're young, and I'm concerned about you mishandling funds or someone taking advantage of you. It'd be best to set up a conservatorship for this. And hey, I know a guy. Well, it would turn out to be his friend Russell Lafitte, but he would never disclose the fact that he personally knew this person.
Oh, wow.
So Russell would become conservator over these clients' money. And a lot of times the clients never got their money or got very, very little because Alec and Russell were spending it.
Damn.
There was a man named Hakeem Pinkney, and I bring up this name a lot because it's the one tangible example I have of how tangled the web is and how you know, everyone's like, this guy is crying. I don't think he's capable of this. And he may not be. Maybe he hired someone to do this. I don't know, because he definitely tried to get someone to shoot him. That happened after the shootings. He tried to get his cousin to shoot him.
Wait, who did? Sorry.
Alec did.
And this is the guy we're looking at now, right? Or
Yep.
Alec is okay. So okay.
So I'm telling you, there's like it's so
It's
insane.
a big rabbit hole. Good Lord.
It is. It's like you couldn't. This is like a soap opera that nobody wrote. But Hakeem Pinkney was a client of Alex that was in a car accident with his family. He was a deaf gentleman, but due to this accident, he also became quadriplegic. So
Oh, wow.
he was in like a rehabilitative hospital. I believe it was in Augusta, Georgia. And he was actually set to come home. He was going to be cared for at home.
Okay.
But I can't remember if he was on a ventilator. I believe he was. But he had to be there for a while, obviously, because nobody really has a hospital bed and a ventilator in their home. So again, they were getting things prepared at home and insurance and whatever.
Okay.
Well, before other than that, he was cleared to go home. Well, someone unplugged his ventilator, which I have read that typically has several alarms on it
Yes.
in case it gets unplugged.
Right. Accidentally, or the patient shakes or something and it
Right.
dislodges. Yeah.
Apparently that didn't happen. He passed away. He can't call out for help. He can't move. He can't push a button. It has been said that he he survived for about 30 minutes after his ventilator
Wow.
was unplugged. And his account that Russell was over was still used after he passed.
Oh, good Lord.
So nobody was really on to Alec then. So your question earlier, you know, obviously no sane person is going to murder anybody, but the logic of killing someone to get money, or it seems as though that's something that isn't foreign to them. And I don't know if
But
they
your own
are.
family.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I mean, like I said, your own family. Like maybe I can, in that frame of logic and train of thought, understand like somebody else, right? But your
Yes,
own wife and kid, like so there was like one child and the wife, right?
that
That were
were murdered.
murdered.
Yes, he has
Yeah.
a surviving son
Wow.
who's been in the courtroom.
Wow. That's crazy.
So, according to Mandy's investigation, the person who has the podcast, I think she said she has sources that the wife was on the way out trying to divorce him,
Okay.
perhaps even knew about some of his financial atrocities. I believe he was starting to come on people's radar for his financial things even before the boat crash happened in 2019.
Okay.
So, the day that Paul and Maggie were murdered, the law firm that he worked for, and, again, his great grandfather started, confronted him about missing money, like millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you think about a person trying to gain sympathy from people and distract them, like basically, who's going to be sitting there asking you about millions of dollars in money when your wife and son have just been murdered? No one's going to sit
No.
there and continue doing that, especially people who know you, know your family, at least not for the current time. He's basically trying to buy time so he can maybe fix the other financial stuff. It's super sick,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
but that's kind of the consensus that people think could be a motive. And
I mean,
also, again, just like me and my husband thought, I think he was betting on the fact that a lot of people would assume Paul, especially, which everyone thinks was his target that night, that everyone would think he was killed because of the boat crash, like someone was trying to get revenge.
wow. Somebody watched way too much television.
I don't think he did. I think it's being brought up with never having any consequences and your whole family never having consequences and people
Right,
being
but
afraid of you and law enforcement being afraid of you and judges being afraid of you.
even then, this person has to be a sociopath, right?
I think
Because
so.
the thing is that even like I think like if you were put in the same situation, with your husband, all this kind of stuff, and you had embezzled like millions of dollars or had done all this kind of stuff, I don't think the first thought in your mind to deter from that aspect is to kill your husband who you love, right?
No. I mean, I'd probably be like, yeah, he's probably going to divorce me. The gig is up, you know what I mean? But no, killing someone would not go through my mind.
Well, especially someone that you cared about. Like even if they're going to divorce you, like I've been through
True.
divorce, right? And I would never think about inflicting any kind of physical harm on her. Like it wasn't
Right.
fun, but I still care about her, right? Even though we got divorced and all this kind of stuff. And even
Right.
on top of that, your kid. Like I don't know if you have kids because I never
Yes.
asked, but
Yeah, never.
right?
Never. How sickening. That's why people are like, again, he's breaking down in the courtroom crying, see somebody couldn't do that. Well, I still think, especially if you don't have anything other to do than to just sit there and hear over and over again what potentially you have done to your wife and son. and you're seeing pictures. And there was one time in particular, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, like they have on the attorney's desk, the monitors, they have like the lid of a box so they can cover up the monitors. So if, Alec doesn't want to see his slain family, he doesn't have to. But I
Right.
swear there was a time where Alec took the lid off the monitor, stared at the screen for a minute, and then started hysterically crying and put the lid back on. Almost like he kind of,
Did it on purpose.
needed to see that in order to kind of get his emotions going or something, because I think unless you're, I don't know, I know serial killers are probably sociopaths, but I don't think he's a serial killer. But
No, he would be. In the aspect, the serial killer is someone who repeats a pattern over time, right?
yeah,
A mass murderer is someone who kills multiple people in one instance.
one night or one, yeah. I even though I do think he's a psychopath, I still think he is sorry he did this, if he did.
I mean, I could see like, so for example, I could see like your like empire is crumbling around you,
Yeah,
and you're angry, and on top of that, your wife is leaving you, right?
right.
And I could see an aspect of a crime of passion, whereas he was mad that she was leaving, and maybe she's like, I'm done with you. You're a horrible person. You're a monster, and I'm done. I'm leaving. You covered up our sons, this and the third. I
Right.
can't deal with you anymore. And he gets angry and kills her. I don't understand the aspect of killing the son.
I think he was trying for it to be a red herring because of the boat crash. Hey, Stacy.
That is crazy because the thing is, he would know, like, as a lawyer, right? Even if he only delved in like civil law, he still studied criminal law. And no one, like, I guess he thought he was above reproach. Is that the aspect that we're looking
Yeah.
at here? Like he could
Oh
get away
yeah.
with murder, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. For certain.
Hmm. That is crazy. Like I know this stuff still exists, and my family did not grow up wealthy whatsoever, right? So we have no idea there's like this southern
Right.
but we did grow up in the same hometown, but we don't garner the I guess you call it the like protection from that hometown the way that someone who
Yes.
grew up the way he did, right?
Right.
And so there's no like a hometown privilege, I guess is the word for it.
Right. Your great grandfather and grandfather weren't all, solicitors of
Correct.
5 counties for like 100 years.
And people, no one's scared of my family other than the fact that don't mess with them because they will return the favor. But other than that,
Yeah.
you know,
And I kind of think it's people who all have dirt on each other.
yes,
So
that's kind
it's
of how that works, right?
easier to get away with things as well. I think it's like the power aspect. Like if you don't do what I want you to do, you're not going to have a job. You're not going to, you're not going to
Well,
practice law here. You're not going to.
think about this for a minute, because what is a small southern town, right? Or a southern community, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's religion
Yep.
and hometown folk being good to each other, quote unquote. But if you are part of that community and you do things that are outside of the accepted norm, like for example, like I grew up in a town that had like we had like 6,000 people and 2,000 Baptist churches, right?
Right. Yes.
I didn't grow up Baptist, but the thing was is that if you were a Baptist, you were expected to do certain things and act a certain way and not do certain things. And if you did, now somebody has some dirt on you, right?
Right.
And that was one of the bad things about growing up in a small southern town. And so Man, it's crazy because this is almost like a TV show coming to life.
It really is. One of my favorite books is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil,
Yes,
and that has nothing on this.
it's so crazy.
It is insane. And I don't think we even know everything yet. I don't know who the mentor was of Mandy Matney, but basically a journalist mentor of hers, I believe, told her, if you want the story, follow the money. So that's what she did with the boat crash.
It's always follow the money.
And
The
that's
money.
what she's done this entire time, and how she has uncovered so much.
I mean, you see the same thing that the union and I do all the time when it comes to these fraud reasons and everything else. It's always follow the money,
Yeah.
right? Because 9 times out of 10, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is, and
Yeah.
it coincides with the love of the adoration and the fame and the power that you
Power.
get from
Mhm.
having money, being from money, being all this kind of stuff, right?
Right.
That is
I mean, again,
crazy.
his son, the last bar that they stopped at, again, all these kids were underage. They were like 19 or 20. They were close to being drinking age, but not quite yet. And operating a boat. They stopped at a local bar in the town. I believe it was off of Fripp Island. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, he goes in there and basically badgers the people to give him a drink. He uses his older brother's ID also to get alcohol there, and at the gas station before they had left, because they all went to like an oyster roast at someone's property, where all the adults were, and were basically like,
I've been there too. Like
yeah,
there was a time I was at a buddy of mine's house. His dad was a cop, right? And I was sitting there drinking with the justices of the peace and
yeah,
the DA and everybody there. We're all out there and like drinking together. And when you're a kid, like you don't think about that to an extent. Like I didn't stay in my hometown. Like I left, right? I joined the military.
yeah,
But if I'd have stayed, I can't imagine the things we could have gotten away with.
yeah. I'm hanging out with adults in my town too. I mean, there were, where the house to go to where the parents didn't care if kids were drinking or not.
Right. And they're like, oh,
So,
as long as they're drinking here, it's fine, right?
yeah.
Yeah. No, no.
But they let them leave in a boat. But that's something too. So, the girl that passed away, her family just settled with the Murdaugh family. It was actually Maggie's estate. So they settled with Maggie's estate and the Parker Corporation, I believe, the one that owned the gas station where the alcohol was sold to Paul, who's underage. Oh, I can't remember what my point was.
Was it the fact of them settling?
No, something about money. I can't remember. It'll come to me in a second. Again, there's just so many things. Stacy is saying stuff. Sorry. She said earlier, we had a guy on our street, did his wife, tried the kids too. When he snapped, he wanted to get rid of all his responsibilities. Yeah, not
Oh, good Lord.
too, I mean, don't move to South Carolina. Not too far from me, maybe like 2 hours away northish, is where Susan Smith drove her kids in a lake. So sometimes people,
Wasn't she convinced by the devil or something? Like that was her excuse?
no, she had a boyfriend
Oh.
that didn't want to have kids, didn't want kids around.
I will never understand that. Like as a guy, if I date a woman who has kids, like, you know what it means to date a woman who has kids, right?
And if you don't want to have kids, then just stop dating her.
Yes.
I mean, it's
No,
fine.
100%.
People don't have to have kids. People don't have to get
No.
married. Fine. Don't kill people. Just go on and find somebody else. I don't get it.
I would never even ask. It's unfathomable to me if I was dating a woman who had a kid or kids or whatever. And I've done this in the past. Like I've been a stepdad for a while, right? Like we weren't married, but I was like enough that they lived with us, right?
Yeah.
I never once thought in my mind, your kids are a burden to me, and I want to be here because they're not my biological kids. So you need to like
Right.
figure out something to do with them, right?
Yeah.
But
I
then
wouldn't
again, I
be
was
here if
also
that were the
raised right,
case.
so
My dad, my two older sisters are my half sisters. My mom, had kids before she met my dad. So yeah, I don't get it. After going on a date and her being like, I have kids and you don't want them, then hey, again, go about your business. Sorry.
exactly. Yeah, no, 100%.
Stacy
Yeah, I
said,
agree.
I don't want kids, but I also wouldn't want someone who would drop their kids because of that, let alone willing to hurt
No,
them. Stacey, don't you have kids? I'm confused at your sentence. I don't want kids. Are you saying like what the guy is thinking? I'm assuming. I know you're funny, but I know you're not that cruel. Yeah, she's saying too about like the party house. As a kid, those are the coolest parents ever. As an adult, I'm like, that's really effed up. Agreed.
well, in this aspect, like, so the way I was raised, right, and being from Texas and all this kind of stuff, the way I was raised, my parents are not my friends,
Same.
right?
Yes.
My parents are my parents. Like nowadays, like I'm 40 years old, and my mother does, and my father tell me they talk to me about stuff they wouldn't talk to me as when I was younger, which sometimes kind of weird, but the thing is I get it. Like I'm older now, but they're still my parents, right?
Yeah.
There's still that separation. We are not best
Yeah.
friends.
I agree. I'm not like I love my mom, but we're not the like tell each other everything type. That I yeah.
Oh, Stacey, I'm with you. I don't have kids either. I have an amazing niece and nephew that I spoil all the time, but I also maintain discipline in the house.
Right.
So,
It's fun being an aunt or uncle because you can do all the fun stuff and then be like, okay, go back to your parents now.
well, so that's kind of a misunderstanding, I think, because
Yeah.
for me at least, if I'm going to be in the house, I'm gonna like stay in the house with them or whatever. I'm upholding the laws and the regulations that are put forth by my sister and her husband.
Well,
Right?
sure. It's not like they can just run around and do everything. I'm sorry, Stacey. I might be thinking of Kim then. I swore you had at least one daughter. I think my whole mind is blown because I've thought for years now that you had kids. Heh, I'm a good
Nope.
friend.
No. My niece and nephew are the same way. They are spoilt in the fact that I will buy them books and I will do homework with them. I will spend time with them, play with them with all their toys and all this kind of stuff. Whenever I'm home, that's what I do. We watch shows together,
Right.
but they are not. They don't get to act like, what's a good way to put it, a burden on society.
Yes. Someone once, one of my friends one time, like with her dog, I think it was, she had a little Dotson and she spoiled him to death and was like, he doesn't have to be a responsible member of society. A child does. So you can't, there has to be a line between like indulgence with a child because one day they're going to grow up and they are going to have to follow some of the rules of society or else they're going to get their ass beat or,
Well, what
thrown in
people
jail
don't
or whatever.
like I said, like I'm not a parent, but what people don't understand about kids is that one of the greatest signs of love is discipline,
Yeah.
right? Because it shows that you care, that they don't get to do whatever they want because they do not understand the world.
Right.
I don't care, even like I said, being in the military for the last almost 21 years, I get these 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 19-year-olds that join the military, and I was 19 when I joined. I did not understand the world. I didn't
Right.
understand how to work in this world, right? And I still had to have certain discipline from my parents and everybody else, even though I was technically an adult, right?
Yeah.
Just because the
Technically, yeah.
law says you're an adult doesn't mean that you magically understand the way the world works.
Exactly. We thought we did at that age, I think. I
Well,
think
we always do, yeah, because we're you have all like the hormones and the emotions and all this kind of stuff, and that's one thing I disagree with, and we're getting way away from your entire stream, and I apologize
it's
for that.
fine.
But one thing I've always disagreed with is these teen novels that come out in the movies and things like that, where somehow the teenager knows better than the parents, right?
Yeah.
And it's not true. It is literally setting them up for failure because just because you think you know better, right, or you're awoken to certain things or whatever, doesn't make you understand the way the actual world works.
No, and I think most people who finally get it understand we don't really know anything.
No,
Those
well,
are the
because
people that are more adaptable and more like, "Hey, I can be open to that idea that I think I understand something and be open to the idea that I'm maybe and probably am completely wrong or ignorant to it."
well,
So,
and one of the things is though is that the world requires certain things like paying your rent, paying your electricity, paying your getting a job, right?
right.
And just because you don't feel like doing it doesn't mean that they don't still require it from you
Yeah,
all the time, right?
you can not do it, but you probably won't have a place to live, you know?
Exactly. Or food to eat or whatever. So you might as well just cow down to the way the world is because it's what it is. And then you do the best you can within the system that is given to you.
Yeah,
But
unless you're a Murdoch family.
apparently not. Yeah. And then you get to get away with murder and manslaughter and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I
Well, so this guy, like the way I'm seeing this now, though, is that he's pretty much done for, right? Like there's nothing.
financially, probably, like, the reason he was originally arrested, he was basically in jail when he was charged with murder for both of them. Um, I can't remember the exact charges, but it was basically due to him, mishandling clients' funds, I believe.
Okay.
And again, his friend at Palmetto State Bank would just give him like unsecure loans and just
You know, you
all
saw the
kind of
same thing
other
in Todd Chrisley, right? So did you ever follow like the Todd Chrisley case?
a little bit.
So his mother-in-law, his wife's mother, was a loan officer at the bank
Oh,
that he would get loans from. So he
I
would
didn't
basically be
know that.
bankrupt. Yeah, and that's why she's involved in this aspect of like them hiding money from the feds and all this kind of stuff is because she would sign off on the loans that he would get.
Ah,
Yeah, like it's a whole big thing.
I didn't realize her mom was a loan officer. Wow. So that, yeah. I wonder then if she took uh more of a brunt. So her mom won it. Is her mom being charged with anything?
I'm not sure. Like I haven't looked into it much further than the fact of what I read about
Yeah.
her being involved in the aspect of the reason why they were because he was basically bankrupt the majority of the time. Like he did not have a successful business, right?
Right.
And but they kept getting loans from the same bank, and she just happened to be the loan officer, like the overall loan officer at the bank. And I know she was involved in the case, but I don't know for sure exactly to what extent they actually went after her.
And you know where Todd Chrisley is originally from?
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
I
This
know.
place is great. I am gonna play a little bit of this. Hopefully I went
Please.
back before or skipped over the phone number, because again, I'm sure his phone is in evidence right now. I don't know if somebody else has his phone number now, but Law and Crime straight up did not redact him giving his phone number. So I am going to mute myself.
I hate to have to do this.
I
but
understand.
yeah,
I totally
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
So you don't have any problem
Yeah.
with it.
So just start at the top, take your time.
Like when I came back here,
Mhm.
I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was.
And again, I'm not debating like his emotions right here are not real, but I don't think they are completely just because I think it's losing them and regret for potentially doing it as well.
Well, and how much of it is the fact that he got caught, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing is
I'm putting
that
on a
it's
show
one.
right now.
Well, not even I wouldn't even say he's putting on the show. I think that what he's feeling is regret that he never thought he was ever going to get brought up on charges, right? And now he knows
Yeah.
that it's not because he's sad about killing his family. He's sad because he knows he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, right? And
Yeah.
he's going to lose all the privilege that he had leading up to this point. And so is the sadness coming from the aspect of his actually losing his family, or is it because of the fact that he knows he's fucked?
Yeah. And maybe fearful of what the rest of his family is going to think or do. Are they going to stand behind him or not?
And the fact that he's going to lose his name, right? Like he has tarnished the name, which
Definitely tarnished.
sounds weird, but like that is more important to some folk,
Oh, yeah.
right? And and that's what that kind of scares me, right? Because there are people out there who like you're more sad over losing your status than you are over the fact that you killed your own family.
Yeah. I can see that with him especially. And it's interesting too. There have been phone calls of him while he's been in jail, like between he and his surviving son. And I cannot remember when he was actually arrested. I think it would have to be after September 2019. I'm pretty sure it was sometime. Sorry, not 2019, 2021. I believe that's when Maggie and Paul were murdered.
Wow.
But it wasn't that long after they were murdered, like within 6 months. And again, he was not originally charged with their murder. It was the financial, things. But in his phone calls that I've heard,
Okay.
it's never, hey, is there any word about the investigation into Maggie and Paul's death? How are you doing? It's quite fascinating to hear his phone calls because they are quite manipulative, in my opinion,
In what way?
in laying on this thick sweetness But if you understand everything else that's going on, it's really selfish and insensitive. Again, it's never asking about, he kind of asks about his son a little bit. I don't want to say ask, but it's like, I know you're going through a lot, but can you do this for me? Can you get so and so to call so and so? And can you do this? And can you do this? And I know you're going through a lot and I don't want to trouble you, but I'm going to give you a
Wow.
list of 10 other things to do.
It's still me. Yeah.
Yes. And one of the phone calls with his sister in law, I believe, it's asking for her to put money on his books, which is understandable. You're in prison. You need to have money, and you can't put the money on yourself. But she's trying to ask him questions about things she's hearing in the media. Supposedly you've been involved with this and that. And you can hear it in her voice. She wants to ask him, but she doesn't want to ask him. And this isn't necessarily even talking about the death of Maggie and Paul. This is, I think, more of the financial things she was asking him. I can't remember if she does kind of ask him like something related to Maggie's death, but it's he kind of just theoretically like pats her on the head like, oh, I know you're worried about that, but hey, how about those, you put something on my commissary? Did you the amount of time he spends consoling her is pretty much nothing. And then he gets right back to, hey, can you do this for me? He sounds sweet and he sounds nice, but I don't think he is. What does Stacey say? I won't stand by my family member for this and definitely not getting any commissary money. Yeah, it's been very interesting to see the members of his family that have shown up for court and are sitting on his side, basically, to include his son. His son's, I don't know if this is the same girlfriend he's had all this time. One of his brothers is there. Another one of his brothers was also there during like jury selection, but I haven't seen him since court has actually been in session, like the trial. I think his sister-in-law is there too, and I don't know how many sisters-in-law he had. Well, I guess it would be two if he has two brothers. But one of them is there, but none of Maggie's family is there. And I think I even talked about today what that could mean, whether or not they think he's responsible
Right.
and they don't want to show up.
Well, I wonder if there was a history.
Yeah,
So the thing is, and we're talking about these families are deep rooted, especially in the legal system, right? He could have been increasingly violent against her, and no cop in that precinct was going to
right,
file a report, right? Which
right.
is abhorrent. It is absolutely abhorrent that they would not, speak with the victim and all this kind of stuff. And maybe this is the one thing that came out that she actually felt the power to leave him, right?
Yeah,
And which I don't get that, because the way I was raised, my daddy always told me, right? He said, if you ever raise a hand against a woman, I'll be the first person in line to knock you down. Right? Like, I don't care what
exactly.
happens. I don't care what happens. You like, and I actually had this happen one time. So me and my next girlfriend of mine, the one who had the kids, right? We got into a fight,
Yeah,
and she got like increasingly violent, right?
yeah,
And I told her, I said, well, if you come at me, you get one chance, and
right.
this is what it's going to be. And even then, when she came at me, I didn't hurt her because I can't, right? And I walked out of
Yeah.
the room and I called my dad and he said, he goes, son, right now, get out of the house. Right.
Exactly.
You leave. Right. And there was never any chance of me doing any harm to anybody. Right. Because
Yeah.
I was raised that you do not do this. Right. Like you defend yourself. Yes. However,
But if you have the opportunity to get out and leave before that has to happen,
yes, you
yeah.
100%. I don't care. And it's kind of hypocritical to an extent, right? It's kind of one-sided, right? Because if it was the same thing with, with a woman, she would be able to do whatever she wanted to defend herself, right?
Yeah.
But there is an aspect of because of the fact that men and women are not the same. Like I am physically stronger than pretty much anyone I've ever dated.
Right.
Then I could have the potential to do more damage. Like, and that's a discussion for a whole nother day. But the thing was, I left, right?
Right.
And I was told to leave because that's just not what you do, right? However, when it comes to these kind of families and all this kind of stuff, things get hidden all the damn time.
Yes. And when you mention, like, if she had called, let's say that happened and she had called law enforcement and they wouldn't report it, I doubt a family like this would even call law enforcement. They probably just call within their family and take care of it that way. I
Even
don't
if she had
think,
called law enforcement, even if she called the cops because of his family's,
yes.
stature in the community, it wouldn't have mattered, right?
Yes. No. Again, going back to the boat crash when Paul
Exactly.
was booked for being charged with, I can't remember exactly. I don't know if it was manslaughter or reckless endangerment or what, but he was charged with something related to the boat crash. He
At
didn't
least
go to
DUI,
the
right?
jail.
Boating under the influence.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Well, because it is boating under the influence. A BUI is a legit thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a friend who had to go to court for that and pay lots of money.
It is not cheap. It's the same as driving under the influence for most folk.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I'm normally they tell me way back when one of our friends, Lake Greenwood, had a lake house, lake trailer down there, and we'd go get in his little pontoon boat. And I drink a little bit, but I don't really drink a lot. It's just not necessarily my thing. So
Oh
I
yeah.
would be the designated stand in front of the steering wheel when we see people come past. You're driving. Cool. Yeah. And then when people would go away, I'm like, and again, I just want to say that it was nothing like
It was. This was in the fun. It was not in the aspect of what they're doing. Yes.
right. It was like literally we're in a pontoon. Oh my gosh,
Pontoon
boat, and they'd have like one or two beers. Nobody was sloshy, but it was still probably not right and definitely against the law for them to have an open beer and be boating. So, yeah. But they wouldn't let me drive that much after that, probably because I was shit at it, but still. Um, yeah. So when his mug shot is not him out of jail. Paul's isn't. And he's like in a nice like collared shirt and stuff like that. I
Really?
mean,
That must be nice.
I don't think he was booked at the jail. I can't remember
See
where
some
he
of that white privilege I didn't get.
Yeah. Some of that small town old money privilege. All right, let me play some more.
Sorry. And I could see his brain on his. And I ran over to Maggie. And actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and
there's some big debate, and you can tell both the defense and prosecution has been really honing in on this, the fact whether or not he checked their pulses, tried to give aid, whatever, because number one, there was nothing on him. No blood, no, like his hands were clean. That was said a lot on the stand today. In fact, the officer that's sitting directly behind them mentioned that a lot. She could see his hands during this interview and that there was nothing on them.
Is that his lawyer sitting like catty corner to him?
Yes.
Okay.
Lawyer and friend.
Ah,
that also
nice.
works at the law firm that he worked at and his family
So
started.
there's no conflict of interest there at all, right? Yeah,
Not even a
none
little bit.
whatsoever.
Not even a little bit. All right, let's play some more. Oh, yeah, I guess there's like Paul was found to have his cell phone on top of him on his back because apparently Paul was found like face down with
Okay.
his arms underneath him. And his cell phone was found like on his back. I think Alec kind of explains it a little bit here. But this was talked about in court today as well.
Before
I don't know. I
we
figured
go
it
into
Sorry,
out.
this,
hold on just a second. What did you say?
I just want to mention one thing. So, and this may be like a minute detail, or maybe I'm just being like too critical, but I'm looking at this guy's hair, right?
Yeah.
Alex, right? And the thing is that, you know, maybe you could be blonde. Well, he's got to be what, in his 60s, 50s?
He was born in 68.
Okay, so you're looking at like roughly in his 50s, right?
Yeah.
And close to his 60s. Looking at his hair, the aspect is that blonde is something that tells me if he may just be naturally blessed with that kind of blonde hair, but he's dyeing it, right?
So they are redheads.
Really?
And I think, like in court, his hair looks like a little faded red on top right now. I think that is his hair turning white. So it looks like it's losing the red color. Let me see if I can find other pictures of
'Cause
him.
it looks really blonde in that aspect. It
Yeah,
looks like a dyed blonde because I'm a blonde naturally and my hair is going white now,
it
right?
does. But so
Well,
he's
the reason I
a
say
redhead.
this, and the reason I bring this up is because if he's like, you know, that kind of like narcissistic
Yeah,
to keep from looking older, then it goes a lot into the aspect of, you know, maybe his aspect of motivation, period.
right. I don't think it's vanity. I don't think he's vain. No, I don't want car interview. I have that up already. You see, I'll play some more while I'm looking for this.
His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly.
So again, that's him kind of explaining like, oh, I tried to perform, or no, not try to perform. I tried to look for a pulse. And when I did, his cell phone slipped out of his pocket. So I put his cell phone on top of him. It's a weird, why would you put his cell phone on top of him?
Then I went to my wife, and I mean, I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And, you know, I called 911. pretty much right away, and she was very good.
So 2 things right there. I called 911 right away, pretty much. I found that interesting. And then he's saying she was pretty good, meaning the dispatcher,
Yeah.
which is strange. He's a couple times throughout this night been about greeting people, politeness, different things like that, which could be part of Southern charm, but I think it's a way for him to just be trying to manipulate people with kindness. Look, I'm a nice person. Look, I've got all this going on, but I'm still thinking of other people. Like, I'm not a slime ball. I'm not, it could be a little bit habitual, but and yes, everyone deals with things differently. No one knows how they would react in something like this if you hadn't done it yourself.
Right.
But to me, that requires effort to think of and mention the dispatcher when you're, again, this is taking place only perhaps around 2 hours after his 911 call. So him finding and calling them pretty much right away after he finds his wife and son. So this is pretty fresh. I
don't think you would remember her demeanor. I think
no,
what you would remember is
and not
you call 911 and said, this
bring
is
it
what's
up.
happening. And you would know what she told you to do. Like, if they're bleeding, put something over it, help stop the wound, all this kind of stuff. Like, she was helpful, right? She
Yeah,
aided me in doing this. Whether or not she was nice about it has
right.
nothing to do with it.
And why would that matter anyway?
It
I mean,
wouldn't.
why would it matter to mention she helped me, she whatever?
Well, I
Like,
mean,
letting them know
if you're in
she
the
did
aspect
her
of like,
job.
I was glad that I had a helpful voice or whatever. Like you look at the Dre case when the they told him like do CPR, do all this kind of stuff. She didn't even mention that when the cops interviewed her, right? It had nothing to
Yeah,
do with 911 call. And then you get to hear where she was nice. So you took time out of like looking at your wife and kid being slaughtered on the floor
yeah,
to remember that she was being nice to you.
right.
Like that's not even a Southern charm thing. That's some bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then to not only remember that, but to make a point of bringing that up while the police are interviewing you.
Interrogating you.
Let's just say he didn't do this. Like, what would be the point of bringing that up right now?
No, there would be no point.
It's bizarre. And
It's not
again,
like she's going to get a customer service review
yes,
when
that's
you're
what I
fucking
feel
911 call.
like. All right, let me play.
I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family members. I did that. And
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little
It doesn't make
boy,
any
real
sense.
good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
So he mentions I tried to call the little boy around the corner, which I'm kind of wondering what the race of this person is, because I know it's pretty common. I'm not saying he's doing this, but for it could be because of
boy he
race,
used for
or it could also be like for any type of help. And I've heard, I think I read on Twitter somewhere tonight, where the boy he's mentioning right here could be the grounds person of this property. and that people are speculating that he was hoping, Alec was hoping that the grounds person would find Maggie and Paul instead of him, so it wouldn't
Well,
implicate him more.
my question is that why would you get off the phone with 911 when you're trying to save, you like horrible thing happen, right? And you're going to try to save the wife and kid as much as possible. You would stay on the phone with 911. Why would you sit there and say, I want to end the call with you so I can call family members?
Right.
Like that doesn't make sense to me. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but
Sure.
it don't make a
But
whole
his
lot of
family is
sense.
full of attorneys too.
See that's where the sense comes in, right? But the thing is that if you're this distraught husband, you're going to try to
Yeah.
do whatever you can to see if they're alive, to see if they are, they're once again, like I said, I've been talking about the Dre McCray case, is that she, cut him down and she went straight to 911 and then did CPR to help him stay alive, right?
Yeah.
She didn't stop and call family members. She had to stop and tell her kids to go back in the house. But she
Right.
didn't say, well, I cut him down, I did CPR, so now I want to call family members.
And the grounds person, who would think of
Yeah, exactly.
who would think of calling them? That's not someone you're like typically emotionally close with.
You call the
So
family members after the authorities have gotten there and they have done
yeah,
the best they can, the EMTs and all this kind of stuff. Then you start calling them after you talk to the cops, right? Which is what we saw in I hate to keep bringing this up, but then in the body cam footage with Dre, right?
yeah,
She was telling her kids to stay in the house because she had to talk to the cops, right? She
okay,
wasn't texting family members. She wasn't texting, whoever. She was
right,
texting them to stay in the house, and I had to talk to the cops, and then she talked to the cops. It wasn't like I hung up with 911 so I could call family members. It
exactly.
just seems a bit weird.
I think it's weird too how many people, again, I'm thinking like in an emergency situation, like, okay, I do have children. One of my children, one of my, yes, my son is disabled and he has a seizure disorder on top of lots of other fun things. But especially when I don't want to say I've gotten used to it, but I've gotten used to what needs to happen in an emergency situation like this.
Right.
So there will be times, because I also have a second child who's younger than my son, that if I'm going to the ER with my son, I need somebody else to take care of our daughter.
Okay.
So there have been times like I'll administer my son's emergency medication. I'll be on the phone with my husband. Hey, I'm about to call EMS. He's having a seizure. Come home, get off the phone with him, and immediately call 911. I'm also not stumbling upon someone who's been shot to death.
Well, you're talking about a situation that you have prepared for, right?
Yeah, and I've experienced before.
Exactly. And it's something that I need to, this is not something new. This is not something that I've come across, just, abruptly, right?
Right.
And so you have a protocol set in place on what you need to do, who you need to contact, and how much time you need to call these people before you call 911, right?
Right.
That is completely different than walking onto a crime scene.
Right. I agree. I can see someone wanting to call like a family member for like emotional support or something like that. I've heard people panic at 911 calls too, especially when they're the person who's like hurt, honestly, when they're like in a car accident or something like that. Like, I need to call my dad and let him know I'm like okay. And
Yes, yes, I'll agree with that. Yes.
But
That's usually the person who's involved in the injury.
yes, exactly. But I don't know. I'm trying, because I know so much about this person's history. Not that I'm a juror. Thank goodness I'm not for this, because I'd be dismissed right away. But I'm like, go ahead. I've already made up my mind. I can't change my mind. You might as well dismiss me. But trying to play devil's advocate a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm sure if I walked up on someone I love being dead, yes, I would immediately call 911. But then, because he was on the phone with them for quite a while, and he does live way out in the sticks, so it takes quite a while for first responders to get there. So once things are kind of settling in your brain, like, oh gosh, you're thinking of who to
Okay.
call, and I'm sure it would cross someone's mind to want to call a family member. But I find it odd that he did get off the phone. Like, a lot of times I think when people panic like that and, oh, I want to call so and so, they're like, okay, you need to stay on the phone with me until police or EMS
Right.
gets there. I've even heard 911
Make sure that you're
operators.
not to make sure you're not the perpetrator, right?
Yeah. And even with panicking, and even like you said before, he wasn't a criminal attorney, I would think he would know better than that.
And the thing is, though, is that the thing that, and well, granted, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cop. One of my best friends is a cop. However, it doesn't make me an official when it comes to this. But if you stumble onto a crime scene in your own house,
Mm-hmm.
there is no guarantee the person who did this has left,
Right.
right? And so when I call 911, I'm going to stay on the phone with 911 to make sure that they know everything that's going on with them, my ability to do any kind of like life-saving measures,
Mm-hmm.
and then on top of that, to make sure that nothing happens to me in case the guy's still there.
Yes.
Like I mean, granted, I have never been in this situation. I've never walked on this situation, but you would think that is one thing that you would want to stay on 911 with in case something happens to you, because it's recorded.
Yeah. And again, for safety measures, like if something should happen, you should see the person all of a sudden that's responsible for this. You're going to let the operator know, oh my gosh, they're here, or
To let the police and the EMTs know it's a dangerous situation or what, something,
right.
something, right?
Yes. So yesterday, I think it was, they played more of his 911 call than I've heard before. And in that call, he stated, so with this property, hopefully I didn't mute my mic unplugged.
And just make sure that anyone who's listening, that this is done via the fair use, principle and all this kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
that everything is transitory, and we're
Opinions.
doing a breakdown of what has happened based on these video calls that we have.
Yes. So the house is a good distance from the dog kennels and the shed. I believe Paul was found near the dog kennels, and Maggie was found closer to the shed, and the shed and the kennels are closer to each other. Alex states in the 911 call, because she asked, do you have any weapons on you? And he says, yes, I went back to the house and got a gun. So I have a rifle and it's near my truck. I don't have it like on me right now, which is also kind of interesting if you think about if you're not the one who did it and you think someone still may be out there, I'm going to have my weapon on me, not
Yes.
sitting at the vehicle, propped up against the vehicle. But so I was like, wait a second. He drove on the property, saw his wife and son laying there injured. He drives to the house to get a weapon
My weapon's in my car.
and drives back and then calls 911.
So as a military member, I can't carry a weapon in my car when I go on base, right?
Yes.
That's the one exception I see to this aspect. But if I was a civilian,
He's not
and
military.
especially in a place like South Carolina, as a civilian who has, I'm guaranteeing you, he has a a carry permit and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would have that weapon on me all the time. I would draw my weapon immediately.
Right. And even if you don't have a concealed weapons permit, I believe in the state, if you're driving with it, it just has to be behind a latch.
It's a castle law. It's a castle law aspect.
Okay.
So in Georgia, it's almost the opposite of like other states, where in Georgia you can have a gun in your car. It has to be showing though, right? Whereas in like Texas, you can keep it hidden. It can't be showing because in Texas, up until recently, it was considered brandishing if you showed the weapon in your car, right?
Yeah.
But in Georgia, I remember when I got my concealed carry in South Carolina, and the reason I couldn't have it in Georgia was because they didn't have agreeable laws and all that kind of stuff. But if I was in Georgia, the gun had to be showing in my car to fall under the castle law.
Okay.
And so for those who don't know, who's going to watch this later, the castle law is that a man is, I say a man and woman are, able to protect their home and their castle, right? And the castle extends to your vehicle. So the vehicle is considered part of your property, right? Which means that you are allowed to carry in there without having to have a license.
Yeah.
In Georgia, if you're going to carry a gun in your car, right, without a license, you have to have it showing at all times.
It makes sense both ways, because I know when you get pulled over here, if you do have a weapon, and again, here it's not just hidden, I'm pretty sure it has to be behind a latch. Like it can, if your console has a latch, it can just be in there. Or like if you go to the shooting range, you have to have it, and if your case has a latch, then it's fine. It does. Dang it. But like if you get pulled over, you have to let the officer know.
Yes. And
right
the one
away.
thing is, anyone who's listening, do you never call it a weapon. Say, I have a concealed carry in my car. Because weapon is a trigger word for most officers, especially young officers. So say, I am concealed carrying in my car.
Right.
Puts them at ease.
Stacy says here you don't have to have a license if it is open carry, but you do have to have it to carry concealed. That's the same here. It's different while transferring it in your vehicle. You have to, like in the car, it has to be concealed and latched. But if you have it concealed while you're just walking around, you have to have a permit. It makes sense and it's confusing at the same time.
Well, in Texas went to constitutional conceal and open carry at the same time. So
yeah,
you can literally conceal carry and open carry in Texas because it's constitutional without having to have a license. So, however, I do recommend still get your license because it transfers over to other states.
I think it's smart too, because if you have to have a license, then typically you're taking safety.
Well, I will never. I'm a huge Second Amendment advocate. Like I love the Second Amendment. I think that it is there for a fucking reason.
Right.
I will never support open carry.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I remember one of my friends, again, I've lived here in South Carolina about 20, I stopped counting after 20 years, but I grew up in Northwest Florida, which is Southern.
Yes. Yes.
But my friend who had moved here from the Bronx, I guess the first weekend they were here, they went to like the convention center for, I can't remember why they were going, but there was a gun show at the same time. And again, it's just like funny to me what you grow up with, what's normal to you and what's not. And here, people are thinking like New York City, like crime, guns, and yes, that occurs, but it's typically more on the illegal side where I grew up in Northwest Florida and then now in South Carolina. You go to a gun show, you're likely to see people with a rifle or something on their shoulder because they're probably selling it at the gun show or whatever,
Yeah.
and because open carry is legal here.
Well,
So she was so freaked out. I remember her telling me the story. She's like, when we first moved here, I'm like, that guy's got a gun, and that guy's got a gun, and that guy, where did I move to? It's so funny to me to hear someone from the Bronx be afraid when they moved to South Carolina. I
right.
found that. And then again, I'm like, do people not just carry guns in New York? And she's like, no. I'm like, wow.
They should. Crime is crazy
Yeah.
out there.
Stacy says you can also get your license here via correspondence course.
Yeah.
What's
And,
correspondence course? I don't think
online. It means online.
Ooh. Usually the gun shows are also gun-free zones. Really? Ours are.
No.
Ours aren't.
No, ours aren't either.
They seen.
Usually gun carry zones.
Yeah. I mean, you can't have ammunition in it, but
You can in Texas.
you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't here. All right, I'm going to play some more. I know it's like 11:30 here, so I may not get through all of this, but which is perfectly fine. I
apologize if I've derailed your entire
No,
stream
not at all.
with this.
I know I've talked to you a little bit, but Spackle can attest, and Stacy, and pretty much everybody. The whole reason I do YouTube, I love having conversations. I love talking to people. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, of course, yes, I'm interested in this, but I would be sitting here watching this by myself anyway. So my husband's sick of this. When this stuff first came out, when he would come home from work, I'd be like, oh my gosh, and this person, this politician, the Savannah River, and da da da. And he'd be like, you are thinking way too deep about this. But when this started to gain more statewide attention as far as who was involved with what,
No writing. Yeah.
and then his friends started talking about it instead of just me, stay-at-home bored housewife, he took it more seriously. But even still, he's like, I don't care. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't care. All right, let me hit play.
What all was around Paul when you walked up?
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there were some body things. Yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence? I know you said the phone fell out the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir. Not. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's.
I find that a little bit of an odd statement of him. For one, it's pretty late at night, and again, the house is a decent distance from the kennels and the shed. But okay, this is a hunting property as well. It was her main living residence. However, it's 1,700 acres,
That's a good sized property.
and it's a hunting property. You mean to tell me, because I would have to guess that those are probably hunting dogs. You mean to tell me that only your wife goes out and takes care of those dogs? Not to stereotype, but every man that I've known that has hunting dogs, like I remember one time
No, we
when
always take care of dogs. Yeah.
my best friend's husband was out of town and she forgot to do something in particular. Like her husband was very particular, pardon me, about the dogs. Because for one, some of them are quite expensive. And I would
Yes.
only imagine that their dogs, the Murdaugh's dogs, were probably pretty damn expensive. So that's kind of like a source of pride in my experience for the guys I know that hunt and have hunting dogs. So not that I'm saying I think a woman couldn't handle it or whatever, but this isn't the same scenario as like someone in her little Shih Tzus or something like that, like pampering them and painting their nails. So the fact that he brings this up a lot. He brought this up. I think it was one of the detectives on the stand today that said that he brought it up, like maybe it was a police officer that first responded that kind of mentioned why Maggie and Paul were at the shed in the kennels that far from the house that late at night.
Yeah.
Oh, she's the one that messes with the dog. She's a dog lover. She just loves dogs. Again, from what I know and understand, hunting dogs, they're loved and well taken care of, but it's not the same as like having a house dog.
Right. No,
In fact,
they are very go ahead, sorry.
a lot of people like send them off to certain places and pay money to have them trained.
Like a lot of money. Yes.
Right. Yeah, Stacy says her husband has a particular way he feeds his cats and they only hunt toy birds. Makes sense.
But my dogs only eat at certain times.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm
And they
saying.
get treats at certain times. Yeah. Like my dogs are my dogs. Like I don't know any man who has dogs unless he didn't want them, who is not like bonded to them.
Right. Well, yeah, unless they didn't want them. You're correct. Because my dog is my dog. But and I will admit we got her a little too soon from losing another dog who was my husband's dog. But I really wanted another dog. It was like probably 2 months. And also he was going to be going out of town and we had someone come into our backyard and like steal our lawnmower and different stuff. So I, number one, was ready to get another dog and I wanted one for safety reasons. So she and I bonded and he loves her, but she's my dog. But she's also not a hunting dog. She is I went to the pound and got her dog. So
yeah. No, my dog Eden, my ex-wife wanted her. Right.
yeah.
We went to the pound. She's like, I found this dog. I love her to death. Her name was like Princess or something. I was like, my dog is not going to have a name, so we'll give her something else. And then my ex-wife left to go on some training. We were both in the military, right?
Okay.
And so she left on some training, and then I got more accustomed to eating than she did. When we came back, we started to get, separated and divorced and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, well, it's like she's taking more to you than me. I'm like, yeah, because you haven't been around,
Right.
right? This is a dog I did not ask for. I have my dog. My dog
Mhm.
Archer was my man dog that I wanted, and he's a big baby, right? He was not the man dog I wanted, but he's a big baby. However, Eden now has become a man dog because if there's
Yeah.
anything sniffy around it, she's part pit bull, and now she will attack anything.
Right.
I'm just like, but she's my baby girl, right? And
Yep.
so, yeah,
I have a
my dogs are my dogs.
pit terrier too. She's a big baby.
Oh, they are big babies. They're so needy.
Yes, she is my shadow.
Yes.
Sometimes she follows me around more than my kids do. And I'm like, go lay down. Just let me walk from the
So,
kitchen to
I
the
have a
living
question
room.
for you.
Yeah.
I lay down on the couch, take a nap, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one will get up behind my back. I'm not a small guy,
Mm.
and she will just need to be that close to me and then breathe
Mhm.
heavy, right?
There are times where my husband will say it's like she's trying to wear your skin. It's like she's trying to
Yes.
get in me or something. I'm like, we can't get any closer. Like you're on me. And she's not a lap dog. She's a big dog.
Well,
So
my dog is small, luckily enough, because she's like a mixture, right?
mhm.
And so she's like 40 pounds, but still, she tries to get like molecularly bonded to me.
That's a perfect description. I'm like, we can't become one living being. I'm sorry. Even if
But
we could, I don't want to.
and one thing I'll say right now, like when my dog's passes, Archer's he's getting up to 13 years of age and all this kind of stuff. He passes away. The next dog I'm getting is a pit bull. I love
Yeah.
pit bulls. They're the best dogs. And like I said, my Eden's like she's part pit, and
Yeah.
she is the most loyal dog I've ever
Mhm.
had in my entire life.
They're super, super sweet. My dog's name is Sasha, and I was a little concerned getting her. I understand the breed's not born aggressive, but I know that people, if they use them for fighting dogs and things like that, and she was around 2 to 3 years old when we got her. I did not want a puppy. I already have children. I did not want to potty train another
Well,
thing.
did you get a female pit?
Mhm.
So female pit bulls are naturally protective of women and children.
Really?
Yes. They are instinctively protective of women and children 100% of the time.
That's really interesting. Because she's, you know what? And she's more protective over my daughter than she is my son, which you'd think it would be the opposite because
No.
my daughter is typical and he's disabled, but she's more protective over my
They are
daughter.
more protective of women and children.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so she would protect your son over like myself. Like if I came up
Right.
towards your son, she would protect him. But they are more protective. The female pits are more protective over women and children than
That's
anyone else.
interesting. Makes sense. It matches up. Because she is, I often wonder though if she really would protect me or if she would just lick someone to death. But
Oh, so the thing is about pits, and what I love about them is that they're big babies, right?
mhm.
Until you threaten the people that they love,
Yeah,
then they get fucking vicious.
I
They
would
perceive
hope
you as
she
they're
wouldn't.
kind of like Labradors. Like Labs are the same way. If you are someone they are not accustomed to, especially a male, they're gonna get vicious.
Yeah. She also gets vicious with lawnmowers, generators, and vacuum cleaners.
Loud noises.
She
Like
doesn't like
my dog
any of those.
Archer is part lab, boxer, and a husky.
Yeah.
He hates fireworks, lightning, and anything like loud like that, right?
Yeah.
But again, when I vacuum the house, my Eden, who's part pit, like hates it, right?
Hmm. Yeah, Sasha hates it. She will actually. She's a little bit more chilled out now. Not really with lawnmowers and generators, but the vacuum, I guess it's a little bit. She doesn't like it, but she won't attack the thing. She'll try to not attack, but growl at the person who's operating the thing she doesn't like.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
myself, like she's growled at me before when I've been back. I'm like, I don't think so.
The only thing that's sad is that I got Archer because he was dropped off in my neighbor's backyard like 10 years ago,
Yeah,
right? 12 years ago. And so I got him, but I got Eden from the pound.
right.
She still has the pound bark to this day. I got her. Fuck, when we get her? Like 2011,
So she's at least
almost
12
10.
years
Yeah,
old.
getting close. Yeah, she still has the pound bark. I can hear her when I drive into like my garage. I
Mm-hmm.
get out of the garage, I hear her still barking the same pound bark.
Right.
Like they notice me bark, and so I will never buy a purebred ever.
No, I don't think there's too much reason to. Well, I mean, my neighbors do. They buy golden retrievers, but I don't know. I just
There's just too many dogs that are get discarded. There's too many dogs who
exactly.
are, putting pounds. That
It's,
when my dogs go, right,
mm-hmm,
I will get another dog from a pound. I
right.
will never buy a purebred.
Even the only purebred I've ever had was a greyhound, but I rescued him as well. Because,
Well,
I
that's
mean,
different. That's a rescue. That's not
right.
buying a purebred, right?
Yeah.
Now I have friends like Menace to Sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he breeds greyhounds, not greyhounds. He what are they called? Not greyhounds. They are Scooby Doo dogs. What are they called?
Great Dane?
Great Danes. Yeah, he
Okay.
breeds Great Danes, but it's part of his business, and I'm
Yeah.
fine with that, right? Because he takes so amazing care of them and all this kind of stuff. But I will
Yeah.
never buy a purebred, period, ever.
Man, a Great Dane, those things are gigantic.
Oh, you should go to his I think he's got a Twitter account or whatever, and he shows the Great Danes on there. Like they're amazing dogs. Like they're gorgeous dogs. They're
Yeah.
so big. They're like you only like 400-pound dogs.
They're huge. I know we
Yes.
have restaurants downtown here that has outdoor seating, and I remember being outside eating at a table and someone had a Great Dane and their dog sat down next to them, but was still their
The same
head was
height.
level with the human's head, and the
Yeah,
dog
it's
was sitting
crazy.
down. I'm like, holy jeez, it's insane. But, all right, let me see if I can play a little bit more. My battery's kind of dying too. Plus, it's almost midnight here, so I might be on for maybe another 20 minutes or so.
For just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there.
So he's saying here too that he's claiming that he went to the house first. He left. And that's what he's describing, that he called and texted Maggie. I think he said he was going to the store or something, which I believe he actually went to his mother's house. He says a couple different things, I believe. But
Right.
so he's driving away. I haven't looked yet at a map of the place.
So what is his?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
What is
you're fine.
his breakdown of the way events happened? Because obviously someone came home, murdered his wife and kid, right?
Right.
And then left. So what is his, like, granted, like I said, I haven't watched this as much as you have. So what is his explanation for this series of events that have happened?
As far as him, as far as timeline, I'm slightly confused because the way I thought I heard from the podcast, which I heard this probably like a year ago, his 911 call, and again, it wasn't the whole thing, was that he was never at the Moselle property and that he just drove there to meet her and found them. But now, as of yesterday, when they first played the extended 911 call, he does admit that he was there, left, and came back. He claims that he left and he claims that he was there the majority of the day and that with Paul, and that Maggie had come sometime later. And he does say that in this interview, I believe. But and again, I need to look at the map of the place again because I don't know. I know there's 2 ways to get on the property at least, and I don't know if the, like, drive from the main house goes by the shed and the kennels, because if it does, then well, if it doesn't, and he claimed that he texted and called Maggie and they're on the same dang property, and you're trying to get a hold of her and tell her you're leaving or coming back or whatever, why wouldn't you just stop by on the way out where you think she is and talk to her if you can't get a hold of her? Number 2, I don't know if the drive goes past the kennels and the shed, but I believe he claims that he left the property after being there for a while, went to his mom's house, I believe, because he says that she has late time Alzheimer's, which she did. She's alive. Dang it, my microphone. Went to go check on her and then came back and found Paul and Maggie. And this was at nighttime as well. No, nobody took anything. But again, his son was the one responsible for this horrific boat crash. Everyone was fairly certain that although he was going to court, he probably was not going to have severe consequences for this.
So what is the evidence against Alex that got him to get arrested in this?
When I first heard of it, it was that they found some either blood spatter or human matter on either him or his vehicle. There was like forensic evidence of it.
What about the murder weapon?
They have not located the murder weapon, but it is similar. I think, okay. 2 different weapons were used. One of them was with a 308, and I cannot remember which one.
Okay.
And I don't remember the other one.
So he used 2 different murder weapons on each of them? That's weird.
It is. But if you think about if only one of them was his intended target, so to speak, maybe he didn't know the other one was nearby.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't change weapons though,
True.
right? So say for example,
I
I
don't
had
know.
like a 1911, right?
I'm not a good psychopath.
Yeah, to me either, but I've dealt with people doing similar things.
Yeah.
If I'm going to murder somebody, right? So if, say for example, like I would murder my wife, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to shoot her with a 1911 45 caliber, right?
Right.
And somebody walked in on me
You
who
wouldn't
I
change
was not
weapons.
expecting. I wouldn't change weapons to kill them,
Very true.
right? Like I would shoot them with the same weapon at the moment in time because now they have stumbled upon what I've done. They are now a witness to my crime.
Yes.
So them being dispatched with two different weapons is it's kind of
It
interesting.
does create doubt that there wasn't more than one shooter. It does create doubt that perhaps he wasn't involved.
Only if the thing is like the only thing I can make sense is that and I'm not like any conclusion here or whatnot, but if you
Oh,
wanted to
I've
prove like
come
a
to
murder
lots of conclusions
suicide,
with this.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said I've come to lots of conclusions with this, so you're fine.
Well, if you want to do like a murder suicide, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe even then a murder suicide use the same weapon. Like the only reason
Right.
to have two different weapons is to indicate that two different people did something.
Yes.
Well, okay, so Stacy says unless something happened to the first gun, you wouldn't change it. And I agree. So you would have to but the
Like
thing is though,
one
you have to be
misfire.
carrying like two different weapons though. Like so
But
like
this is a hunting property. He even says in this interview, they're like, what kind of weapons you guys own? He's like, you name it, we've got it.
Well, my question is though, is that so what were they killed with? Because like handguns are things that like you keep on you, right? Like in rifles, you don't normally carry around rifles on even on a hunting property unless you're going hunting, right?
I think one of them was shot with a rifle, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But I do know
Man,
that it was two different weapons. That's what the defense is honing in on. Like, there has to be two different people. There has to be two different people, which it still doesn't mean that he wasn't one of them. But
well, shit. Because I had to go back and I wanted to go look into this. You got me down this rabbit hole.
welcome
Thank you.
to the shit show. Not trying to be cultish, but for me, the best source of information, okay, either the Murdaugh Murder podcast, and again, she reported on
Right.
things. It's while the events were happening, so
Yes.
it follows a timeline rather than a subject. She now has the episodes titled where you can kind of go boat crash. Okay, I can listen to every episode on the boat crash, or I can listen to every episode regarding Paul and Maggie. Or, even though I don't necessarily care for them anymore, Fitz News, spelled Fitz, I believe, let me look that up real quick, is a good source as well, because technically the majority of that was from Mandy Matney. She worked for that online news outlet before she went more full-time with the podcast. Let me see. Is it Fitz or S?
There's no way, unless you're trying to, like, purposely trying to, like, pretend that there were two killers. The only reason why you use two different caliber weapons.
Yes. And again,
But that's some movie shit, though. That's some
He
movie shit right there.
he tried to get, and I mean now it makes more sense why. I'm pretty sure he was probably trying to frame his cousin for the Maggie and Paul murders. I believe they were murdered in June or July of 2001, and then in September of 2001 he called 911 because he said he got a flat tire out on a 2-lane country highway out in the woods and went to change it, and someone attempted to shoot him. Then what came out is that he had called his, again, second or third cousin, called him up, told him to come out and meet him, didn't really tell him why. And then when he got there, he was claiming, he being Alec, was claiming that I want to end my life. I want to end my life. I need you to shoot me. Like, I can't do it, but I need you to do it. And his cousin was like, I'm not going to shoot you. He's like, no, I need you to do that. And there was some like struggle over the gun or whatever. And I don't know if it, for one, there's speculation whether or not the gun went off at all. And then I think there's also the story that there was a struggle over it and that it went off and kind of like grazed him. So he was life flighted to a hospital in Savannah, I believe. And he showed up for court for the whatever financial charges he had. And during the what is it called, hearings for that or whatever, like wounds on him for where he claimed he was shot. And I think it was not that long after that too, don't know if he went to court before or after this. I'm fairly certain this was after he claimed someone shot him. He went to rehab in Florida, I believe, because then the story, he's trying to spin the story that he had an opioid addiction.
Okay.
And that's why he spent all this money, which people are like, for one, he never showed signs of being addicted to opioids ever. And it's like millions and millions and millions of dollars.
What's it got to do with the two different bullets being the family members?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, how does that relate back to the actual crime scene?
Saying that if he's the only one that did it, would he be the type of person to set it up and make it seem like it was two different people rather than him?
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I think he would, because he tried to get his cousin to come shoot him. Told it was because suicidal. At 911 call, he is claiming that got out of nowhere.
So he would have to actually go in and grab two different guns.
And again, what I've been familiar with is, how do I say this more carefully? I think definitely if you're on that large of a hunting property and are that kind of a family, you probably have guns around multiple places.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But to have the wherewithal to use two different weapons on two members of your family, that's
yeah. I'm kind of thinking the line that Stacy is thinking, something like the gun got jammed on like the first gun he used.
But he would have to have the other gun with him, right? So
I don't think that's very unlikely that he would have a different gun nearby. Did that load? I put the link for Fitz News in there. If it doesn't show up in the comments, I'll put it like in the description or something later. I've got 15 different ones in my cabinet. It'd be easy to grab another if I needed to, but I wouldn't go out of my way unless I needed to. Yeah. I don't think this was a crime of passion. I think that this was premeditated. So I would assume he would be somewhat prepared. If he was driving, he may have had a hunting rifle in the car and just grabbed it out of convenience. Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, pretty standard in North Florida. I don't see it as much up here. But anybody who had a pickup truck also had a gun rack in their car. Maybe it's because the whole latch thing here. That probably makes it in Florida. In Florida, people just had guns displayed in their car, so that's normal to me. So I'm sure it's pretty likely that it was right there in the back window. But on to 13%, so let me play some more. And then maybe we can do this again. Again, I've got a little bit more free time this weekend, so tomorrow night I might be up here again.
There, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed.
What's Maggie's full name?
Sorry.
No, that was my fault. Sorry.
No, this happened to me earlier today. The streamer just like kicked me out. Just stopped the whole thing all of a sudden. But hold on, let me see if I can share my screen again. I think it skipped ahead a little bit, but basically Alec was like, Paul was here. We were talking about planting more sunflower plants. They were asking how his relationship was with Paul. He said, very good. Maggie, very good. I mean, like any marriage, we had our issues, but everything was as good as could be. All right, let me hit play.
Brandstetter, Murdaugh,
And her date of birth, sir?
September 15th, 1968.
That's very true, Stacy. So many details, so many
Have y'all
explanations.
been having any problems out here? Trespassers,
None
people
that,
breaking in?
none that I know of. The only thing what comes to my mind is my son Paul was in a boat wreck a couple years ago, and there's been he was charged with being arrested for being the driver. There's been a lot of negative publicity about that, and there's been a lot of people online just really vile stuff. But when Paul's out and about, I mean, people
That part's
routinely. I don't think I know the full story, because I don't think they give it to me. But I mean, he's been punched and hit and just attacked a lot. So, but I mean, nothing like this.
Yeah. Any one person in particular or group of people
I don't know.
that you could think of?
Not that I know, no, sir.
So what's
he reached out
interesting
other than
here
him?
that a lot of folks online have pointed out is that if this were the case, if Paul was being harassed, which he perhaps was online, not by me, but this family would know who it was, and it would be dealt with in one way or the other. I know that not just because I don't like this family. I have seen, or at least this dude, I have seen this type of mentality around here so much. Even if someone is guilty, even if the family knows their child loved one did something. Again, I've known of people who may or may not have lived close by, who may or may not have impersonated a police officer and pulled someone over, and may or may not have been arrested for that. And their spouse may or may not be from a well-to-do family. And if you try to look this stuff on the internet, it's not really around anymore. It was when it first happened because the person that he pulled over did a Snapchat video saying the police officer that just arrested me is getting arrested. And I could go into that for a lot. But also during the Murdaugh Murders podcast, there was another story that came out of Orangeburg County in a similar family dynamic to Paul and the boat crash. This particular kid, I cannot remember his name now, he's early 20s, had been accused of assaulting women, not once, not twice, at least 3 times, and never been put in jail for any of it. The people in town harassed one of the girls so badly for accusing him that she felt her only way out of all the small town harassment over accusing, oh my God, he wouldn't do this. He's just a good Christian boy. She felt her only way out of extreme harassment was to end her life. This was covered in Mandy's podcast as well. She basically stopped reporting on this family to bring light to this situation because this kid had gotten arrested again for, even though he was supposed to be on house arrest for all of this, had been seen by a police officer stumbling out of the woods at night, which was his normal place he liked to assault girls, coming out of the woods drunk one night, and had been seen that night trying to take a female employee of a bar home. So she made this, she being Mandy, brought national attention to this. So then this kid was actually arrested and actually held accountable. I feel like, other than this being a complete soap opera shit show, this is another reason why I'm so invested in this and get angry when people are like, oh, this guy, he's just so sweet and he's just so upset about his family. If you're someone not just rich in the state, not just having money, but you have to be old money, meaning from back in the, I was on one side or the other during the, oh my gosh, I cannot
Civil
think of
War.
the war. Thank
Civil
you.
War.
I'm like, what is the name?
Yes.
If you're any of those families or adjacent to them, you have a lot of power and influence. And I have a daughter who lives here.
Well, the one thing I always say is that growing up as a guy, right, is the one thing I've loved is jujitsu, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I love about jujitsu is that if you are a woman learning jujitsu, you can have the power to take over a man who attacks you. And why did I say this? It's because jujitsu allows you to get comfortable on your back,
Mm.
right? So
Yep.
9 times out of 10, if an attacker comes at you, he's going to be stronger than you.
Correct.
And he gets you on your back, which normally is a very vulnerable position for a woman or any person, technically, any person, right?
Right.
But if you learn jujitsu, you understand that the back is one of your best positions to have because you can use your legs and everything else in order to take on your attacker. Like you get comfortable with being on your back.
You can probably do like weight distribution and like throw them off or
Of course it
something
is.
like
It's
that.
physics.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
The thing is, I feel like even with that, around here, they would still find a way to make it where the woman made that up. And
That
they
may
would
be true. That may be
slander
true.
her.
But I guarantee you one thing, though.
She wouldn't be assaulted.
Yes.
It'd be an attempt.
Yes.
Yeah, that is true.
And I tell you, and I'm not a woman, right? I don't know what it's like to be, in that position. But
Yeah,
I'd rather be standing in front of a jury not being assaulted than being a woman
very
who
true.
was not believed in being assaulted, right?
Yeah, you have a
Like
point there.
I'd rather break the guy's arm or his ankle or his kneecap or whatever and stand trial than I would being physically assaulted. Right?
Yeah,
And then that I do not understand that. Like as a guy growing up in the South, like I don't understand that. Like I don't get this. That was not the way I was raised. Like you don't treat women like that ever.
yeah.
Fucking ever.
That's not the way anybody was raised around me either. Again, I had such, like, when I moved here, even before I realized the things I know now, people excuse things of, oh, well, honey, you live in the South. I'm like, I grew up in the South. South Carolina is a different culture. I'm telling you.
Well,
It's not just
it ain't
regular
fucking
South.
Texas. That shit is not tolerated where I come from.
Right.
Like you
Either
don't
where I come
you
from.
don't mistreat women. Like,
Correct.
and as much as there are, this aspect of like equality movement and all this kind of stuff, like men are different than women physically, right?
Yes.
And I got told from a young age, you are stronger than the woman that you're going to come in contact with. You don't ever use that physicality to abuse her, to force her, or do anything.
Right.
Right? And that is kind of a detriment to men nowadays because we are taught not to defend ourselves to an extent.
Yeah,
And
I've
we
heard.
don't understand that it's okay for us to defend ourselves when they like, because we do have aspects where women are the aggressor.
Absolutely. Women can be responsible for domestic violence against and assault against a man. It's not as heard of because it's seen as a sign of like weakness. Guys are embarrassed.
Yes.
People don't help with that because it's like you're a wussy, you're a this, like you let a woman beat up on you, Yeah.
Yes. No,
There's a whole
100%.
stigma around that. But
And the thing is, you didn't let her beat
absolutely.
up on you. You didn't defend yourself because you were taught not to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Don't
And
retaliate against a woman.
it's fucking crazy. But the thing is, though, I will never, any man who raises his hand to a woman out of anger is no man.
Right. Yeah. Again, welcome to the shit show rabbit hole of the Murdaugh saga. Just let me know when you get to the jellyfish. I'm still waiting for any of my online buddies to learn about the jellyfish. Nobody's gone that far down the rabbit hole. So, Miami 80s drugs and jellyfish.
Yeah, how about square fishing?
What fishing?
You heard about square fishing?
Square? Wait. Yes, that's when you find things floating in the water.
Yeah, like pot because
Yeah.
it floats, right?
No, this is jellyfish company is a front for something else potentially.
Gotcha. Nah.
And people have witnesses who were going to testify against things. They got hit by a car when they were on vacation in Florida. So, and the local paper in that area was like, that car seemed like they were aiming for that person. So again, if you get bored, there's always something to read and listen to about the Murdaughs for sure. I'm away from my charger and I'm on like 3% battery, so I'm gonna have to go. Thank you for coming
Cool.
up here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I
I've had fun
appreciate it.
talking about this.
Me too.
And I'm talking about this for days.
Well, hit
All
me
right.
up anytime you want to have me on. Like, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you again for being here. And thank you, Stacy, and whomever else was here watching or is gonna watch. Hope everyone has a good night. Bye.